Hello, everyone. Today, our special guest is Diane Bell. She is a writer, director, and mentor. She is also the author of Shoot from the Heart, a popular book on independent filmmaking. And we dive into storytelling, how to write and finish great screenplays, and the interesting journey that led to her own scripts being produced. So if you're a screenwriter or a storyteller of any kind, this interview is full of amazing insight. Enjoy. Let's get your origin story.
So I guess like many people, I always loved the movies. And I also always loved writing. And I never really imagined that I could write movies. That was not something that was on my radar or something that would have seemed possible to me at all when I was growing up. But at a certain point in my 20s, I definitely started to have a little dream of writing a movie. And it still seemed incredibly far-fetched and ridiculous. I didn't know anyone in the film industry. I had never been anywhere around anyone in the film industry. It was a crazy idea. But I just started to have this little feeling. And I was writing. I always was a writer. I loved to write. So I was writing short stories and things like that. Not with any great success, just for me, really. But I love to write, but I love movies. I was obsessed with movies, and I was an absolute cinephile from the time that I went to university in Edinburgh, Scotland. I studied philosophy, but I would always go to the Edinburgh Film Festival, and I would watch everything. And I was an absolute cinephile, and I do have that thing like Godard and like Tarantino. I didn't go to film school, I went to the movies. And so when I finally had an idea for a movie, and I had this idea, I can remember the exact moment it landed for me. It was late at night in Edinburgh, and I was watching I don't know, some crappy show about what happened to them kind of thing, and it was about Mickey Rourke. And I was like, yeah, what happened to Mickey Rourke? Mickey Rourke was such an amazing big star, and what happened to him? And I was suddenly like, I'd been thinking anyway about this question of voiceover actors and people who dub movies into other languages, someone Spanish person dubs Mickey Rourke's movies into Spanish for the Spanish market. I'd been thinking about that, and I was thinking like this would be a cool thing to make a movie about people who dub movies and stuff. And suddenly I was like, everything sort of pinged together, and I thought, oh, imagine if you'd been the voiceover actor dubbing Mickey Rourke's movies into another language. And you're like, I have got the best career in the world because he is amazing. He was the biggest star. He was the best actor. You're like, I'm going to be making movies forever, like the best movies. This is amazing. And then he blows it on an epic scale. I mean, there's not many actors, I think, that have fallen that far. So this was the beginning of an idea of a film for me. I was like, imagine if you were the voiceover actor of Mickey Rourke and he blows it, and you decide, I'm going to go to LA and find Mickey Rourke and get him back on track. Right? That was the beginning of this idea. So I had the idea, and this is like that origin thing. I was like, I thought it was like, there's something here. This would make such a great movie. But I had no idea how to write a screenplay. And I had no idea what to do or anything. And I did what most people would do. I went and bought a bunch of books on screenwriting and started trying to figure it out. And I faffed around probably for like 3 years, like not writing the screenplay. And
We all been there.
yeah, right. Knowing that this would make a great movie, but not writing the screenplay. And then finally I was like, I'm going to do it. And by this point I had moved from Edinburgh to Barcelona, and I was working as a yoga instructor. And I was like, I am going to write my film. And it still took me 3 years from that point to actually finishing that screenplay.
Wow.
And it took me 3 years because I struggled with so much doubt. I'm not even going to say it was anything else. I'm just going to say that, like, if I was going to go, why did it take 3 years? Because I didn't know what I was doing. And every time that I felt like I didn't know what I was doing, I would go back into, who are you trying to kid? You're never going to write anything. Like, you're no good. This is no good. I'd read back what I'd written. I'd be like, oh, it's awful. I'd be like, oh, no, you're just not good enough. But somehow I managed to get to the end. And, I managed to just muscle through it. And when I got to the end, Tom, I can honestly say something shifted in me. It was like, this had been the hardest thing I'd ever done. Like it sounds like maybe some people were just like, oh, you wrote a screenplay, big deal. I mean, that had been like 6 years probably of my life of struggle. And to have reached the point that I wrote the end, it was like, if I can do this, I can do anything. Like, I just felt unstoppable. I was like, I'm like, this is it. I've done it. Like, that was the hardest thing I could do. Nothing could be harder than this. And I just locked in. I was absolutely like, I'm going to sell this. I am going to sell this because this is good. Something had kept me going all those 6 years, even when it was really hard. Like some mad faith that this film was good, that there was something in this that was good and deserved to be made. And that sustained me. And so, literally, within a year of finishing that first screenplay, I sold that screenplay. I optioned it to a producer, an LA producer who was very experienced. He'd made over 20 films and like totally legit, serious producer. And he optioned the screenplay, and that brought me to LA. And within a few months, I was hired for my first screenwriting job.
Wow, that's an amazing thing. Everything you're saying, like, yeah, went through that. It's amazing. And don't you feel, Diane, like as screenwriters, whether people are struggling to do their first page, let alone their first full feature, or they're on something like rewrites, I'm never finishing, whatever that is, we kind of like just get in our own way in many ways.
Yes, I constantly say to people, the thing that's going to stop you is you. That's it.
Mm.
And you're going to stop yourself at every stage of the game in all different kinds of ways. The problem is you.
Right.
Always. And and when we recognize that, it's really great because that's your power. When you really realize it's you. This is a game about you. All of it. All of it. I mean, it seems like it's mostly about you when you're actually in the creation phase, because obviously when you're writing a screenplay, it is really just about getting yourself to sit in the chair and crank out the pages.
Yeah.
And no one else is involved. It is just you and your laptop. But then after that, there comes this next phase, which is more daunting for a lot of screenwriters, which is I have to take this out into the world. And now I have to convince other people that this is good, right? Like I have to talk to people. And it doesn't matter if you want to sell your screenplay or if you want to make it yourself, you're going to have to convince other people that this is the thing. So a lot of people get in their heads that then, oh, but then it's not me, it's them. Like they're saying no to me. They don't want to talk to me. I have people in my inbox every day saying nobody wants to read my script. Nobody wants to know.
Gatekeepers.
It's them.
Yeah.
It's them. They're the problem. And I'm just always like, I'm sorry, friends. It's you. It's always you.
So
It's
profound.
always you. The gatekeeper thing, it's a complete myth. It's a complete lie. The day that you just release all of that is the day everything will change in your life. It's all you. It's all you. And once you know that, it's the most liberating thing because nothing can stop you. If you have written a great script, I just have this thing. If you write something that is genuinely good, and I think that's the biggest challenge,
Mm.
I will absolutely die on that hill. The biggest issue is not gatekeepers. The biggest issue is not how do I break in? Nobody wants to read my script. That's not your biggest problem. Your biggest challenge is writing something that is really stand out. If you do that, you're gonna find a way with it every single time. That's your problem. That's the
Yeah.
biggest thing. No one wants to hear that because everyone wants to just go, it's the industry.
What's the
It's the
secret? Yeah.
gatekeepers. It's the gatekeepers.
I guess right. There's no one path. By the way, everybody, like you have some amazing courses, and I feel like those types, that perspective, it helps. Everybody's a different artist. They have a different medium or a different approach, or maybe you're in the middle of writing, and that's where you find the backbone of the story. Everybody's got their different thing, and I think you do a really good job of getting people heads out their own asses, so to speak, and being able to find maybe this script for this particular project. Me as this writer, I'm going to approach that totally different with a different project. So even within your own creative dynamic. So maybe we can go into that perspective of, like you said, well, what's a good script? I'm like, I don't know. You're your first audience. You like movies, like you said. Can you maybe dive into that concept?
Well, I firmly believe, obviously, we're dealing with art and it's subjective and nobody knows anything in the industry, but everybody is looking for a sure thing. But there is no sure thing. And if there was a sure thing, by the way, studios would not spend hundreds of millions of dollars making films that are completely shit, which they do every single year.
Yeah.
There's no sure thing. And on the flip side, people make films for very little that are suddenly the biggest thing in the world and whatever, nobody knows anything. Anybody who says that they know is lying. And so what we have is just our own inner sense of what is good and what we believe is good. And we as artists have to find very solid ground for ourselves to stand on where you plant a flag with your script and you say, I believe in this. Some people are not going to like it, and that's the nature of art. Your job is not to please everybody. Every script that I have written, there's a whole bunch of people who are just like, oh, that's shit. I mean, they've literally said to me, that's shit. You're never going to sell it. And then 2 weeks later, I've sold it. And I'm like, oh, well, guess you got that wrong. Same with actually making my first film. And I literally, just before it got into Sundance, somebody who was involved in it got on the phone with me. And, no, didn't get on the phone. They sent me an email just saying, the film's terrible. I think this cut's terrible.
Really?
Yes. This was literally like the 2 days before we got accepted into Sundance.
Okay, let's go into that. So, kind of going on your journey here, Obsoletia, beautiful film, by the way, beautiful film. And making my first short narrative film, I realized like through the process, because you're going through all this uncertainty. But my thing was just at some point you got to have, fuck it, like I'm making this movie. You had to believe in this movie more than anybody else involved at every step of the way. So let's go into Obsoletia. First of all, what gave you this idea? And then Sundance and leading up to becoming a director as well on that.
So the first part is like, why did that film, or how did that film come about? And the root of that story was I had sold my first screenplay. I got hired to rewrite a film for John McTiernan, the director of Die Hard and Predator, which that's a crazy story how that came about. But anyway, we won't get
into going into it.
And then I got, then he hired me to write an original screenplay for him as well. And so I worked with him. I spent the best part of a year out at his ranch in Wyoming, which was quite an extraordinary experience. I got hired to write a horror film. So all to say, I was like making money as a screenwriter. I was like, what is happening? Like a year ago, I was a yoga teacher in Barcelona, and now here I'm making money as a screenwriter. And I just thought, I'm just set up, like it's going to be amazing. And then I had this archetypal Hollywood experience where in the space of 1 week, 3 of these films fell apart for reasons completely outside of my control. Right? So the film that I'd originally sold, the Mickey Rourke voiceover actor thing, Mickey Rourke chose to do The Wrestler. He got The Wrestler and pulled out of our film.
Oh, really?
Just imploded. John McTiernan got arrested by the FBI for lying to the FBI. This is what I mean about outside of my control. I'm like, what is happening? So his projects just flatlined because they couldn't insure him. It was like, he's not making the movies. And then the horror film, they just decided not to go forward with it. And I was like, okay, in 1 week, I went from 3 films are going to get made to nothing's going to get made. And sure, I'd been paid for them. And so it wasn't like there was nothing, but it's also nothing because we don't do this for the money. We do this to make films, to connect a story with audiences. And I was like dagger in my heart. Like, what do I do? And so this is where I get to Obsoletia, because I went, I'm going to write something that I can make. Like, the only way that I can guarantee that something gets on the screen is I make it.
I love that.
As a screenwriter, you have no control. You have no control. You get paid, but the minute you get paid, you lose your control. You've handed the driving wheel of that film over to somebody else.
Yeah.
And it's in their control as to whether it gets made or not. You don't technically even own it anymore. So I just decided then, and it was really with my husband, just totally, he probably was the one that suggested it to me first. He was like, write something you can do, write something you can do. And I was like, are you insane? I've never directed anything in my life. But he planted the seed, and then I just sort of ran with it. It was the typical sort of thing for me with, I feel like I'm a weaver of things. Like, that's how I see writing. It's sort of like, I'll get a little germ here and a little thing there, and it's sort of like pulling things together. Like I was saying about voiceover actor, and then I see Mickey Rourke, it just like pulls it together. And so the Obsoletia started, actually, I was coming out of my library. I love to write in the library. I still do. I'm writing right now a new script. I'm in the library every day. I love the library. And I was coming out of the library, and this was in Santa Monica, and they give away books, old books from the library. They had a complete set of Encyclopedia Britannica, which blew my mind. Because my whole childhood, my biggest dream in childhood would have been to have a set of the Encyclopedia Britannica.
Yeah,
no one could afford the Encyclopedia Britannica. It was like so expensive. It was insane. Do you know what I mean? Like, you were lucky if your parents could get these sort of cheap ones that they would buy one book at a time. And I was just like, what? They're giving it away for free. And that just triggered something in me where I started thinking about things that have value that become worthless. And at that point, it was 2008 that I was writing it. I just started thinking about, all the technological change. Whew, didn't know what was coming. But all the technological change and how fast things were changing and the whole sort of built-in obsolescence thing. And, and I just started weaving together ideas, and I knew I just wanted to write something that I could make myself. So limited number of characters. I went just by chance, my husband and I went out on a trip to Death Valley, and it
Oh,
just blew my mind in all the ways, and just seemed exactly, I was like, oh, this is it. We're going to shoot
like you
here.
could see it, right? Like,
Yeah, totally. And I started writing according to what we saw and weaving things in that are real, And I had this real idea of weaving a lot of real things in. It ended up being less than I originally planned, but originally I thought there was going to be almost like a thread of it that's almost like documentary. And so, like, one of the characters though is real Rock, who lives in this ghost town. He's real. He's just being himself. So there was just this idea, and that was it. And I just started, like creating it. I became obsessed. I'm definitely somebody, like, I get very single-minded, and I do, when I'm working on a project, it just becomes like my blinkers are on.
I love that you go into that because, yeah, otherwise it's like you get, okay, there's a lot of ideas and concepts. And even within your story, there's still like, it's bouncing around. I love, okay, so you're very, very
Yeah,
focused.
I'm
Love it.
definitely like blinkers on, and I just get really freaking single-minded about things. And I was just like, I'm making this film. And right from the start, I said to everybody, when I would sort of pitch it to them, crew members or whoever that I'd be talking to, I'd say, my goal is to get this into Sundance, right? And I go, I have no business saying that, because I said, most likely no one's ever going to see this except our parents, right? But that's my goal, right? Like, that's the highest and best for this film. And I said that to absolutely everybody who got involved. And we pulled it together. And for me, I was very clear that I wanted to make a film. I wanted to have that experience. I wanted to learn how to make a film. I wanted to see what I was imagining on the page, what it really translated to on the screen. That just felt really important to me. And I didn't really, even though I said to people the big goal is Sundance, I didn't really think about people watching the film. Like, I really did not think about audiences. I really was just so focused on making something that I loved. Like, I filled it with everything that I love. You watch that movie, it's like everything that I love is in that film, basically. And all these references that are so obscure. Because it was just like, I thought, oh, fuck it. I'm probably only going to make one film in my life, so I might as well,
Go for it.
yes, just do what I want to do and just fill it with shit that I love. Like, I love bicycles. I love bicycles in movies. That's just something that I've always loved. I love watching people ride bikes. So I'm going to have bikes in the film, and like nice slow-mo shots of people cycling because I just love it. And, it's just like, it was really like that. And that's how it was made. We submitted it to the slush pile at Sundance. It wasn't even finished when we submitted it. It didn't have music or final sound. It had some music because the composer, he was a friend of mine, and he composed some stuff before we even made the movie,
Oh,
like before we shot it. But it wasn't finessed. We hadn't done the color. It wasn't finished. We still had the time code on it, the version that we submitted. And we literally submitted it like the last day that you could submit. And
wow.
I know. And we knew nobody, we had no stars in the film. It was completely just, the kind of thing that you're like, okay. My husband actually dropped it off by hand. I went down that day the Dalai Lama was in California. I went to go see the Dalai Lama. My husband was kindly went and dropped it off at the Sundance offices. And he said, I went over on the motor scooter. We had this little scooter, and he went over on the scooter, and he said, I went into the office, and he said, I handed it to them. And he said, they put it in this like row of envelopes that went all the way down the hallway. And he went, well, there goes nothing. But lo and behold, less than 2 months later, we got the call and saying that the film had been selected. So
That's,
miracles happen.
I mean, that is amazing. And also having that vision, just keep going with it. And I love that you said that, I wasn't thinking of audiences. I'm thinking of this story and putting things I love into it, and I think that's an important factor. Now, give me that, because I know a lot of writers that want to direct their story. There can be with studio or whoever's picking up that like delineation, like, well, you're not tried and true here. So there could be butting of heads. And, some writers are like, hey, I want to do this or else. What was that experience for you going from writer talks and everything going into directing it? I know you raised the funds for it, and maybe go into that side of things. What I love about your story is, and it's the story of everything I've experienced in my life, making my own businesses and working for myself, is Yeah, I'm not. I create my own opportunity. If I wait for a phone call and hold my breath, it's never happening.
Mm.
So create my own opportunity, create my own momentum. So please go into your story, taken from we got this script, we got Sundance, to okay, I'm directing, I'm on set, I'm working with actors.
My idea for raising money for this film was actually this producer that I had worked with. He had hired me to write this horror film that I mentioned. While we were talking, one day, he mentioned in passing that he had offered a couple of directors, filmmakers, $100,000 to make a film. And he had told them, I'll give you $100,000 to make a film, but you're not allowed to raise any more money. You have to make the film for $100,000. And he said, what I couldn't believe is that they turned me down. They said they couldn't make a movie, for $100,000, and they turned me down. And I just like he just told me this in passing, and I stored this story in my head because I went, I'm gonna get that $100,000, right? I'm gonna get a script. He likes my writing. I'm gonna get a script together and a budget together and show him that I can make something for $100,000, and I'm gonna go to him and I'm gonna get this money. So that was the plan. So after I wrote the script, I got a line producer. We made the budget up $100,000. Here's how we're gonna do it. And I went to him, this producer, and I said, okay, you told me that, right? About you offered these filmmakers $100,000, right? How about you give it to me, right? Here's the script, here's the budget. Let's do it. He was like, okay. So he went off and read it. He go back to me. He was like, I love this script. And he goes, and the budget looks amazing. He goes, like, I think you could actually do it for that. He goes, but I don't know if you can make a film. And I was like, well, fair play, because I've never made one before.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if I can make a film either. So you got a point. So I was like, okay, hold this space. And I went off and I pulled together the DP and the actors, and I took them out to the desert and I shot some stuff and I made a little trailer. And I also shot one scene, but the main thing really was the trailer. I put together this trailer and then I went back to this guy and I said, okay, here's the trailer. This is what it's going to look like. And he looked at it and he was like, that's it, I'm in. He goes, okay,
Wow.
great.
That's like a
Now,
proof of concept or
yeah, proof of concept trailer. And it is something I teach about. I really do think I think there's so many reasons to make one. It's not just about raising finance. For me as a filmmaker, I mean, that was the first time I really directed something, was that proof of concept. And I
hmm
can't really imagine actually going on to set the first day to shoot the feature if I hadn't done that.
I see what you're saying.
Like
Interesting. Yeah.
it was such a steep learning curve, and it was absolutely essential for me. And it changed the film too, because when we were shooting the proof of concept, we had certain ideas, like I would have certain ideas. It was so creative. It's like, oh, let's shoot this, let's shoot that. And suddenly I'm going back to the script and writing these new things in because they're visual things that happened in that shoot that I'm like, oh, that's brilliant, that's amazing. It's not in the script. Let's find a place to put it in. So it was great. But I remember the first day that we were doing that, like we broke for lunch on the proof of concept the first day. I just went into my car and had a cry. Like I just sat and cried because I was like, what am I doing? I have no idea what I'm doing. And I was like, okay, wipe up the tears, put some makeup back on and go back and act like everything's fine. So, not to say like it was just like I took it totally naturally. I had no idea what I was doing. And not knowing what you're doing is freaking stressful, man. It's hard,
Oh,
right? Like,
which probably
finding
in
the
many ways benefits you because if you went in there just kind of just impetuous, if you will, and say, okay, it's fine, it probably wouldn't. You care about it, is what I'm trying to
oh
say,
yeah,
and
I
it's probably
cared.
would have
Yeah,
helped in many ways. But yeah,
I
I
cared.
can concur back then.
And so going to direct the film when the film started, yeah, it was pretty scary. It's like, how do I do this? And I was really blessed, though. I had such an amazing crew. My first AD was phenomenal. She was highly experienced, and she really ran the set, and she taught me so much. And that's that thing you learn. And I was like, I had said my goal was I want to learn how to make a film. I learned how to make a film. I didn't go in there. I certainly didn't behave on set like I know everything. I'm the director. I'm the boss here. That's not how I ran my set at all. And I think one of the most important things, if you choose to direct films, if you're a writer, and I think tons of writers are really directors in their souls, is, there's a way to lead and to be the director and the visionary of the film and all that thing where you're still not, it's not that you have to know everything. You don't need to know
Hmm.
everybody's job.
Right, because that's
You're
their
there
job,
to,
right?
yeah, like your job is being the director. That is like you're holding the vision, you're communicating the vision, then you're letting everybody else do their skills, right, to make it happen. And I think you can be a great leader and really inspire people and really get an amazing film because you do inspire people through your leadership, even though you don't have a freaking clue how they do what they do.
It's such an interesting concept because yeah, because that's their job. I have the vision, and that's why it's so important. Like I hear so many famous directors even say like one your first most important job as a director is casting for your characters and script the best way you can, whether it's a no name or a name doesn't matter, because they're going to bring that character life. That's such an interesting concept, but yet you're directing their skills to
Yeah,
navigate. It's amazing
yeah,
anything gets done, by the way. It's so
I
much.
know. I know. And it is that thing like I go, actually, as a director, I mean, when you get to set, obviously, just surrounding yourself with great people who really understand your vision and have the skills to bring it to life, in each department, casting the best people, casting the right people, not the best, in terms of like fame or something, but the right people for the
Right.
roles, crucial. Bringing together, I see it as like you're bringing together a rock band or a punk band in my case, right? Like a ragtag garage punk band. I don't see this as sort of, looking for people who've got fancy credentials. I think it's all about vibe and energy and people having the same sort of creative impulses going on that you're all bouncing off each other and feeding each other and elevating each other,
Yeah.
inspiring each other in all these different ways. I think that's how you make something really terrific. And then when you actually get to set as a director, I think like your number one concern, your number one job is basically be the bullshit detector. Like
Hmm.
I just think everybody on set has very particular things they're looking for. If you've done the work with your DP and your production designer, it's going to look fabulous. You don't really have to worry about that. They're worried about that. The one thing that you do on set that nobody else does is make sure the actors are truthful. And actually, that's the one thing that will kill your film or make it good. Like, nothing else to a certain extent matters. And we can get really caught up in getting fancy shots and we get really caught up in all kinds of different things. It's all distraction. The only thing I think that really matters once you get to set is, are the actors truthful? Do you believe them? And you're the only person on set who's going to make sure that that is happening. You're the only one. Nobody else is looking out for that. Nobody else is helping with that. And so that becomes the crucial thing. There's a quote from Abbas Kiarostami, the Iranian filmmaker who I love, and he said, "A good film is one I believe, a bad film is one I don't."
Like, straightforward. I mean,
And I'm
that's
like, that's it. It's so true. Like, if you believe it, it's good. It's interesting. If you don't, you're sunk. It doesn't matter how pretty it is. It doesn't matter how well shot it is. It doesn't matter. Like, none of it matters. If you don't believe it, you're toast. And that really is about the actors and the performances. So if you focus your attention as a director on that above everything, you have a shot at making a good film.
and let's say like you're going from this film and what you learned on it because okay, I could do the pacing different here, this communicate this different there for the next thing, and it's more expedited, streamlined, better storytelling visually here. What did you pick up from that film, and how was your experience going to like Bleeding Heart, for example, and you had like Jessica Biel and things like that? What inspired that story? What kind of lessons were you applying in that film that you got from your previous writing and directing experience?
So, obviously my first film played at Sundance, and then I spent a year really on the festival circuit, which was really fun, but which I would never want to do again.
Okay.
Like, it's just like takes your whole life over, just going to festivals all the time. And it
Oh,
was
yeah.
great. I'm glad I did it once, but I would never need to do it again. Through that, you're feeling that pressure of what's next. Right.
Okay, right.
Like what, like, it's like, okay, we did that, but what's next? And I can't say that I handled it super well. So I think actually I went to my secret, my biggest goal for years was to go to the Sundance Labs. It wasn't the festival.
Oh,
For
yeah.
years, my dream was to go to the labs. And so when my film got into the festival, I got to meet Michelle Satter, who's head of the labs, and she was like, "We would be interested in having you at the screenwriter lab. You're not eligible for the director lab now because you've already done a film, but you're still eligible for the screenwriters lab because you're allowed one." Also, say I developed something for the Sundance. I ended up going to the screenwriters lab at Sundance and developed a film. And then I was getting ready to shoot that film, and I found out I was pregnant. And I had I was 40 years old. I had some complications with the pregnancy. Then was just like, I'm just gonna look, I just want my baby. Like that's everything. Like, so I became very focused on my baby. Suffice to say, this film that I'd been developing, and this is like over, 2 years or something, had fallen apart. And somehow, weirdly, after I had my baby, I suddenly went and pitched this idea of bleeding heart. And it's really weird how it happened because I went to pitch something else. It was the first meeting I'd taken after my baby was born. So it's like 3 months after he was born. And it was actually for something else that I developed, a TV thing, that a miniseries that was my passion project. It's all these things. This is our lives, as screenwriters,
Right.
all the things that we spent years on that never happened. So I went to pitch this thing, and almost immediately the producer, he was sitting there listening, and he was like, "Yeah, this isn't for me. This is not for me." And I was like, "Oh, okay." He goes, "But what else have you got?" And I just like pitched him this idea that I hadn't started working on at all, which just became Bleeding Heart. But I sort of had this vague idea of it. I was like, "Yeah, I've got this idea about this film about yoga teacher and a sex worker and blah blah blah." And he was like, "Oh, that sounds really interesting to me. Could you send me the treatment for it?" I was like, "Sure." Hadn't written. I mean, I was just like totally spitballing. So I went home and knocked up a treatment, and that became my second film. It's so
Really?
weird. It just happened. Like, and so he paid me to write it. It just got developed. When I finished writing it, it went to this other producer who could finance it, and he offered to finance it, and that was it. Like one person. It was, there was no. It was kind of frictionless. And I'll be honest with you, I was thinking about some of the experience of making that film, because actually making the film ended up not being a great experience. It was not. It was not a great experience at all. I've thought about, what went wrong there, or what the issues were, and there's a lot of things. I'm trying to like articulate. I'm trying to like think, what is
Well, it's a
it,
lot, right? It's
what would help somebody else in this situation though. You know, Having had that success with Obsoletia, I think I lost a little bit of my power because it scared me.
oh,
And what I mean by this is, it was sort of like, "Oh my God, I've done this, but I don't know how I did this." And now I started to like listen to other people a lot more. You should do this, you should do that. Now I had a manager, now I had an agent, now I had the people at Sundance, now I had this mentor who was this fancy person, at Sony, right? And everybody's telling me what you should do next. And there's a lot of noise, and I'm not making choices from my heart and my knowing and my love anymore. I'm making my choices from fear. I'm making my choices
wow.
out of fear of doing the wrong thing. That film, the whole energy of it was off, because the whole energy of it was actually, it was built on fear.
From development through
Yeah,
production.
the initial pitch was fine. The first producer I was working with, fine. But the financier who came on board, and it's nothing against them, great person. We should never have made a film together. And
Mm.
I knew that when we had their offer to make the film. When I received the contracts to sign, or to sign on to like make it happen, I knew in my heart of hearts this was not right. That this was not good. And I sat there and I said, "Well, Diane, though, just like, it'll probably be tough for 6 months or something, but it'll be worth it because you'll get your second film done, and you got to make your second film, and everyone's telling you should do it. So just do it and it'll be fine." But in my heart of hearts, I knew that it wasn't
You
right, and
knew.
I shouldn't be making a film with these people.
But that is a really, really good takeaway, because there are a lot of decisions. Like I was like, all right, I did my first short film, for example. I'm just going to relate to what I've done. And then I was like, okay, maybe I was, like, okay, maybe I should write something specific. Okay, I'm going to do a drama because I want to go towards Sundance Labs. And you just wind up like, it's not the right thing. So when you do something out of fear, or like, or for some specific thing that's not really coming, like that's what I'm hearing from your journey too, is Obsoletia and the precursors to that, like that was more, it just it flowed natural. Or when you were, you're right,
Yeah.
that's more where you
You
need to
know,
live.
when my film Obsoletia got into Sundance, I remember talking to one of the programmers, and he said, Diane, we watch thousands of films every year. He said, so many of them you can just see they cast this person for that effect. They got this band to do the music because of this. And he said, you can see all the ways that they've sort of like sold out the film in order to make it pleasing. And he said, what was amazing about your film, he said, it just feels like pure love. It just like every single thing about it just feels like pure love. And I went, oh my God, that's so true, because that's actually what it is, right? Like there's nothing cynical in that film. Like nothing was done as a design to please other people or to get a certain audience or to appeal to people in a certain way. It just was all love. And, making Bleeding Heart was the opposite because the financier that we had, this producer, and I say nothing against him and his company or anything.
Right.
We shouldn't have been working together. He was very much somebody who like came from a lot of fear. His basic stance was sort of like always to doubt things and to question them. So I work very much from instinct, and as you know, making films, it's just all about choices. It's all choices. Should the character wear these glasses or these glasses, right? And it's like these ones, but why? Why should, and so for me, it's just like these ones. I can just answer any question like that is intuition. It's like, it's just what I love, is what I feel. But now I'm working with somebody who's like, but why did you choose those ones? Are you sure those are the right ones? I think those ones could be better. I think more people would like these. Maybe we should ask everyone. Let's just do a quick poll. What do we think, everyone? These ones or these ones? See, most people like these ones. Are you sure you want these ones? I think these ones are better. In fact, let's call somebody up. Let's do some more research. Do you know, like that was it.
And
right?
meanwhile,
And it's
your
like,
head's just like spinning, like, okay, uncertainty galore.
yes, yes.
And that's interesting too. So, track back to, you mentioned earlier, John McTiernan. I mean, just made some phenomenal films. Leading up to that, what was that first film that got sold and led into rewriting, and then doing some screenplays?
So the first one that I sold was the film about Mickey Rourke and the voiceover actor.
Yes. Okay.
So I wrote that and I sold that. And I sold it to a producer called Peter Samuelson, who, as I say, is a very, very accomplished producer. I'm staying in Santa Monica. Well, I was actually staying in Malibu. A friend of, it's so crazy. One of my yoga students in Barcelona, I was a yoga teacher. One of my yoga students in Barcelona was like, oh, I have this friend living in Malibu. You should go stay with her. So next thing I know, I've got a guest house in Malibu, right?
Yeah.
This connection to live in, which is unbelievable. But I would drive into Santa Monica every day and do my yoga. So I'm coming out of yoga one morning and I meet the man who's now my husband. He's out jogging.
Oh.
It's like, it's also random, right? He's out jogging. He jogs past me and he turns around, comes running after me, 7 o'clock in the morning, right? And starts chatting to me. And, the next thing you know, we agree to go to breakfast the next day and all this kind of stuff. So he then says to me, when I'd only known him, Chris, for a week or two, he worked on Basic with John McTiernan. So he did the stunts and military tech advice for Basic. My husband, the man who's now my husband. At that point, he was just this random guy who had ran after me in the street, right? But he was like, he worked for McT. And he goes, oh, McT's coming into LA. So McT, which is what everyone calls him, lived at this time on a ranch in Wyoming. But he was coming into LA. So Chris was like, do you want to meet him? Would you like to come to dinner with him? Well, of course, right? I'm like, oh my God, like the director of Die Hard, and Predator, and Hunt for Red October. Yes, right? I'd love that. So he said, come to dinner. So we went for dinner, and at the dinner, McT says to me, I hear you just sold your first screenplay. And I'm like, yeah. And he goes, who did you sell it to? And I said, Peter Samuelson. Well, I can still picture it. McT nearly fell off his chair. The look on his face, he was like, what? He goes, I sold my first screenplay to Peter Samuelson.
Really?
Yeah. I mean,
wow.
It's just crazy. It's like all these weird coincidences and things, right? It's like, what? And he goes, yeah. And he goes, how is he? And we get talking and he tells me all about his experience with him like 20 years before or whatever, It's like, oh my God, right? And he's like, I love the idea for your film and this is great and all this. So cut to 2 days later, and I was hanging out with Chris, the man who's now my husband, He gets a phone call and it's McT, and McT's like, "Do you and Diane want to come out to Wyoming for a week?" Chris is like, "Sure." And he'd been there before. My husband had been to the ranch before. He's like, "Yeah, sure." And McT's like, "Great. Meet me at Santa Monica Airport in like half an hour." You know? So it's like, okay. Chris like, "Do you want to go?" And I was like, "Sure." So it's like, pack the bags, go to Santa Monica Airport, and get on a private little jet to go to the ranch in Wyoming. I'm just like, what is happening in life? I'm like, I'm a yoga teacher in Barcelona. This is insanity. So we go to the ranch. We stayed a week. And just while we were there, every day, McT would give me another script to read, right? He'd be like, "Hey, he said, can you read this?" He's quite a gruff man. He's quite like big guy and kind of gruff. And, he'd be like, "Hey, can you read this? And, maybe we can talk about it later." So I'd be like, "Sure." So I'd read the script, and at some point in the day, later in the day, we'd sit and, have a cup of iced tea, glass of iced tea, and sit and talk about the script. And I would just be honest, and I am a total, as I say, like my background, I'm a total cinephile, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, I would just be, and I was very passionate, like just super passionate about films. I would just absolutely, I'm just loving this opportunity to sit and talk with somebody like McT about movies. We would just talk about these scripts, and I would just say, "Oh God," they would be like, "This one's just fucking awful. Like, where did you get this? What's the like?" And you go, "Why?" And I go, like, "Oh, you got to be kidding me! Like, this is so cliche. That's awful. That's terrible. The politics are horrible. Like, it's just a horrible script." So. And he's like, "Okay." So I was just completely like honest and completely
Yeah.
just enjoying talking to somebody of his level and his level of experience about scripts, and obviously hearing all his stories about making his films, and it was just incredible. And when I got back to LA the next week, he called me up out of the blue and goes, "Would you come out here and work on a script with me?" And I was like, "Oh." And I was like, "Wow, okay, I would love to do that." And I was like, "When are you thinking?" He's like, "Well, maybe we can start next week." And I was like, "Oh, I'm going to Barcelona." I was going back to Barcelona to move stuff and everything. And I was like, "I can't. I'm going to Barcelona." And he was like, "This is so funny because it's just like the mindset." I'm like, when I'm saying I'm going to move stuff, I had nothing in the world at this point. Like I had a few suitcases. I'm like,
Yeah,
I
when
was
you look
33
back.
years old, but I had nothing, right? Like I was such a sort of, I don't know, hippie, and I don't know. I own nothing. I didn't own I own nothing. But he's
Yeah.
like, "Why are you going back?" And I'm like, "Well, I have to move some stuff from my old apartment." And he's like, "We can send men. We can send trucks." I don't know why. I just always remember that because it just made me laugh so hard. It was like, no, I'm talking about picking up like 3 suitcases full of stuff. We can send men. We can send trucks. It was hilarious. But that's how I got that job. And that was, and so I went
Wow.
out and worked with him. And it was absolutely extraordinary. I absolutely freaking loved working with him. We rewrote that first script, and we rewrote it from the ground up. Like we totally destroyed what, I mean, we just burned up what had existed
Okay. Well, you
before and
have to right at that
started
point. Yeah.
again. It was a page one rewrite, and it was just phenomenal to me. I learned so much. I mean, I just felt like this is my screenwriting school, my film school, my everything. Like I learned so much from him. I was blown away by his writing abilities and his style. I came to realize, I mean, like something like Die Hard, it was all him. It was just
Wow.
like, his way of, his sense of cinematic storytelling
Hmm.
was absolutely next level. So he would take the way that we worked with this, and it was a terrorist thriller, the script that we were working on together. He would write all the actiony scenes, and he would give me the more character dialogue, like those scenes to write. We would just figure out the next 5 scenes at any point or something. He'd say, "Okay, you write those ones, I'll write these ones, and I'll see you later." And so he would go off to his house. I had my own house on the ranch. I'd go off to my house, and then he would like email me his pages later, and I would collate the pages. And so I was seeing what he was doing, and I was then copying his style to sort of make sure it sounded like all the same script. It was fascinating. Like I was blown away by how he would do it. It was something like, "Oh, I understand screenwriting now." It was like he would write in shot lists, basically. It was so,
Interesting.
the words on the page was just so vivid and so like spot on. The old version of it, because sometimes he would be working from the old version. But the old version would be like, these big paragraphs of like describing the action and all the
Yeah.
things. And obviously it was a decent script. It got to the point that he was going to direct this. It was all happening. It was all set up. But he would take and just make it so just like punchy and funny and
Yeah.
cinematic and visceral. And it was just like a whole other beast. And I just learned so much. I'm so grateful. And we just enjoyed, I mean, we loved working together. It was brilliant. He brought me out again to work on an original script with him, which was a Western that breaks my heart that it never happened because that would have been just an incredible film. So we worked on that, and that was from an original idea of his. It was an amazing story. It was fantastic. And then he brought me out at one point, and this was one of my highlights at that point, was he was working with Gary Kurtz, who had been a producer on the original Star Wars films. He worked with George Lucas, and he did
Wow.
the very original Star
Yeah.
Wars, and the second one, The Empire Strikes Back. So he produced both of those films, and he came out to the ranch, and he was developing this project with McT, and McT wanted me to write it. So the three of us were just on the ranch together for a week. Imagine being like just hanging out with the producer of Star Wars and the director of Die Hard for a week, like on your, do you know what I mean? And the two of them having these conversations. I'm like, how did I get here? Like, I feel like I'm this person on earth. I'm paying money to be here, and I'm getting paid to be here.
That's a phenomenal.
Great.
That's so wild.
But the thing about them, and I just want to say this, just to bring it back to
Hmm.
sort of us and everything, like people like that, the passion for cinema, right? The knowledge of cinema. I know that's how I connected with John McTiernan. I know that's how we developed such a good working relationship, was because I knew all the films he would talk about. When he would say, "Oh, it's like the scene from, this John Ford film," I've seen it. And he would always be referring to things, and always he knew shot lists of movies. I mean, like,
Wow.
yeah, absolutely. And it's like this obsessive passion for this art form, for cinema. And I think I'm like, that's what it's all about ultimately. Everything else is noise. And McT would always say that because he would just be like, he's an art. I mean, that man is an artist. He was just like pure cinema artist. Like he would say to me, because I would joke, he never uses in his screenplays. We would spend a couple days just choosing fonts, which really
Oh.
shocks people because he would never use normal courier. He was like, "There's no way." And I was like, "Okay, you can get away with it because you're McT, so people know. But if I like put it in a script and it was like in this font, I would like people would say you don't know how to write a script." And he's like, "No, no, no, that's for bean counters." And he's never used it. He's never used it. He's like, "Why would I do that? I'm gonna use everything I can." Like he puts maps into his scripts. He'll do everything. And he's
Yeah.
like always done it. The first script he sold to Peter Samuelson, he printed it on different colors of paper. Like
Really?
it had different colors for different worlds or something. So he's always like, I think it's this thing, like we wonder how people get there. And it's because they were always that as artists, going back to that planting that flag in your ground in the ground.
Yeah.
Like I stand for this. This is what I love. He was totally somebody like he knew what he loved in cinema. He knew it. And before he was a big, making billions of dollars for studios, he was already that person. He already knew it. So it's like, what do you love? What do you stand for in cinema? And that's what you got to do. Know what do other people love? How do I please them? What does the
Right.
industry say I should do? What does the industry want? But just like, what do you as a filmmaker love?
And that's what really makes your own identity, and that's what people want. That makes things special. Because not if one director approached this story and making of this film versus another director, you can have a completely different outcome of the product of the film. And let's kind of swing it back to you with your like Instagram and social media and what you're doing with like your book, like Shoot from the Heart, for example. We talked about what you want out of your career and how you approach filmmaking and story writing. What do you want other filmmakers, like whether you see them, okay, they're getting these pitfalls and mistakes, or maybe someone's been doing writing a script for a long time and they're a little more seasoned, but nothing can get picked up. I think you have a new challenge going on right now for like writers getting their scripts bought and sold and so on and so forth. What do you want for screenwriters, storytellers, filmmakers, and what pitfalls and mistakes do you see people making just a little too damn much?
I want everyone to just like be in their power and to make fucking incredible movies. I love movies. I love cinema. I want to see the boldest, most uncompromising, most exciting movies getting made, and I want to see people being in their power to make those. So that's it. I'm definitely, as a human, part of who I am is a teacher. It's just
Mm,
a natural part of who I am. Like I used to teach yoga,
mhm.
and I'm somebody that if I do something that I think is really impossible or hard, my immediate instinct is I want to show other people how to do it. I want to demystify it. I want to just like share whatever I've learned. That's how I was with yoga. That's how I became a yoga teacher because when I started practicing yoga when I was 25 years old, I was the most stiff person. I'd always
Okay.
been stiff, like I was not flexible at all. And I was also very unhealthy, and yoga changed my life. Like it changed my body. Like within the 6 months of doing yoga, I could do the splits. And I was like, I've been walking around my whole life thinking I was stiff, and I just changed it within 6 months. So I was obsessive about like I need to teach everyone this that you can create yourself in every single way. Like whatever you think you are, it's a story you're telling yourself. You are free to
Right.
achieve anything if you're willing to do the work of like making the shift. So I'm just naturally obsessed with like helping people make those shifts. That's just who I am. That's always going to be who I am. So when I went through the experience of selling my scripts and then making Obsolete and getting it in Sundance, then making Bleeding Heart and having this shitty experience and learning a bunch of things, making another film after that. I was like, you know what? I just want to I want to teach people, I want to help people. One of my mottos is together we rise. I really feel like this is it for me. It's like, how do we all help each other? So it's not me against the world. It's not me in competition with other screenwriters or filmmakers, but how do I actually just like share from the heart and share the real truth, like things that I wish people had told me way back when that would have saved me a lot of heartache and a lot of hassle and a lot of struggle if somebody had just said, okay, this is what you can expect here. This is what you can do here. So that's why I do it. I wrote my book, I don't know, 8 years ago, 9 years ago or something, which is all about how to make an indie film
Mhm.
because I just want to demystify the process. And I think it's the most like nuts and bolts
Yeah.
book about filmmaking because it's really like, how do you raise the money? And it's not fancy. It's not about, oh, you go get foreign sales agents and this and that. Because I just felt so many filmmaking books. It's that. And this is like, how do you actually, this is how I did it. This is how I did it. And here's how you can do it. And it's very simple. They actually use it in UCLA.
I was about to
It's
bring that up.
like,
Yes.
yes, it's become a textbook in a lot of different film schools because it's nuts and bolts how you can actually make it happen. And that's just what I'm about. I go, my number one thing though with my work is you are the most powerful force in your life.
Mm.
And screenwriters and filmmakers are always, in my opinion, the biggest mistake they make is they give too much of their power away.
Wow.
They're
Yes.
waiting for somebody to give them approval, waiting for validation, waiting for the things to be right, the time to be right, waiting to get the right actor, waiting to get this. A lot of people are in fear. I mean, that's what it comes down to. And that's why you're not in your power
Mm.
because deep down there is a fear that maybe you're not good enough. Maybe you're going to make a fool of yourself. Maybe it's not going to work. And so you keep yourself safe by actually not really just putting yourself out there. My encouragement to anyone on this path is take your freaking power back,
Mm.
right? Like, what if like everything could work? And just like, what if that idea that you have of, oh, what if I made this little short film? Or what if I did this? What if I did that? Like, what if it worked? What? Just do it. Just do it. You create your own momentum. You create your own opportunities. You cannot just wait to be chosen. You can't
Right.
wait to win the freaking screenwriting lottery. That's not it. It's like if you want to be chosen for these things, if you want to be chosen for the Sundance Labs, I wanted to be chosen for the Sundance Labs. I got rejected, 8 years in a row.
And nobody
Why did
sees
I win?
that part of the path too. They see the person like they're getting all the laurels or
Absolutely.
awards. They don't see the part where they ate it the whole way through up to that point.
Yeah. And it's always, I always have that thing, like in hindsight, it looks like easy. You know, even when I say to people about my story of selling my screenplay and they go, okay, you finished it and a year later you sold it. That's really fast. It's fast, but in a way, it didn't feel fast that year. During that year, I suffered a lot of rejections, a lot of people saying no, a lot of people telling me it wasn't good enough. It was my first screenplay. I could have just folded up and gone home and gone, well, who was I to think I could do this? But this is that thing. It's, you know, I think it's so important for screenwriters and filmmakers to find their tribe, to find people who understand what this path is like, to find people who are encouraging and who will be positive, because there's a lot of negative Nellies in our world. We're always like,
Oh yeah.
like, you know, oh, it's so hard, nothing's getting made, la la la. And I'm like, yeah, but things are getting made.
And this is perhaps more for your book, your channel. You got courses. A lot of things help out quite a bit. What can you advise as far as approaching storytelling, and whether it's a short, someone's doing a short film or writing out a feature or whatnot? We kind of went into like that thing that's your passion and that's the forefront of your mind. How do you like to approach? I'm writing a story. Keep it simple. It's not that precious. Let's go.
So I'm writing a screenplay right now, so I'm in it myself at the moment. You know, first of all, I think every screenplay you write is different, and the process. What I'm really honoring in myself is that it's always its own unique journey, and to trust your own process, I think, is one of the most important things, and not be in a rush to have the final product, because
Mm.
it takes what it takes, and you know sometimes you're gonna try things and it's not going to be right. Maybe you write a draft where it is really shallow and it's all plot and the characters are shit, and that's fine. That's the stepping stone to now going, okay, how do I bring these characters really to life? Now typically I would recommend absolutely doing the character work at the beginning, and my method is 100% character work before story, because characters for me drive story. And I think if you start with the characters, you won't have that problem, right? And that means really doing in-depth character work before you even start writing. And then by the time you're writing, they're alive. They're just alive, and
Right.
they run the show. But if you've gone with a thing where you're like, oh, I'm writing this and it's all plot, just go with it. Trust the process. It's a process. There's a great quote that I love from Jordan Peele, the writer of Get Out, who said, I must remind myself when I'm writing a first draft that I'm just shoveling sand in the box so I can build castles later. I know, right? I'm
That
like,
says it
ah,
all, right?
it says it all. And that's the thing, I think, for most people starting out, the idea of I'm writing my screenplay and it's got to be good is the thing that stops them and blocks them and hinders them, because it's a process. Some first drafts are good, but some are shit,
Mm.
and neither is right or wrong. It's a process. We all get there in the end if we do the work. It's so some people
Yeah.
might have a great first draft and it's already good. Good, well done, you. But it doesn't really matter. It doesn't matter if it takes 10 drafts or 20 drafts to get there. What matters is that you get there. But trust your process, trust your inner nudges,
Yeah.
trust your way. If today you wake up and you're like, no, I just feel like bashing through 10 pages, even though I don't really know what's happening, or even though it does feel like the characters are all superficial, who cares? You can fix that later, right? Like whatever it is, it's like, who cares? Whatever you're feeling, trust it and just go with it, and trust your process and honor that you have a process as an artist, right? That it's not, and it's unique. And it's, for me, it's unique to every film. As I said, every film that I write is different. The one that I'm writing right now is definitely been a different process again. It's a very different process. And I'm just open to it. I love it. Like it's allowing this film to reveal itself to you, I think. I always have this sense that it already exists somewhere, and it's really about me uncovering it or revealing it. It's not me creating it. And my job is to really listen and to let it guide me, to let it show me what it wants and how it wants to do it. And your ego has to take a back seat, because your ego always just wants a completed screenplay that's all perfect and nice, but that's not what we're here for. We're here to listen, and we're here to let it come through whatever's coming through, and to trust that If we keep showing up, it will like we will get there. But the more that we try to force it, or we try to do it according to someone else's rules or someone else's way of doing it, the less that we are tuned out from it.
Yeah.
Like our job, I really feel like, is to become just this open channel for the story. And when we're open, we're not forcing it. We're not in the driver's seat of it.
It's why that's such a beautiful way of wording that. You're letting that just flow out, because life isn't predictable and life isn't super guided. I think that's what makes it real, or the whole concept of you're never going to perfect something. What's perfect is the imperfection.
Absolutely.
So I love that. That's absolutely amazing.
And it's just trusting your process, and that's that thing. Even when you're new to it, right? It doesn't matter. Like, you have storytelling in your DNA. I think people overcomplicate it so much.
Yes.
Our ancestors have been telling stories as long as we've gathered, around a fire at night after a hunt. In caveman times, like, people have gathered around the fire and told stories, right? And it's in our DNA. It's not that complicated. I'm really not a fan of formulas unless you want to make something formulaic, because I just think every story has its own innate structure, and allowing it to just reveal itself to you is the key.
Thank you for joining us on this episode of Methods of Fiction. To hear more insights from filmmaking and entertainment industry professionals, subscribe to our video podcast on YouTube. And if you're listening on your favorite podcast platform, be sure to follow us there as well. We look forward to having you join us again on the next episode.